Night draped over Chicago, the city shimmering in golden lights that danced upon Lake Michigan's surface. Inside an upscale event venue, Imelda Bruce, a renowned interior designer, meticulously orchestrated the final touches for the grand opening of an exclusive high-rise complex. Every detail, from the lighting to the floral arrangements, bore her signature precision. As the elegant space buzzed with anticipation, Imelda reviewed the seating chart, marking the final adjustments when her assistant's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Imelda, Mortimer Sullivan has arrived." She froze for half a second. Mortimer Sullivan, a real estate tycoon, was the force behind this extravagant project. Not only was he the biggest investor, but he was also the most influential guest tonight. A man accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. Regaining her composure, Imelda stepped outside just as a sleek limousine pulled up to the entrance. The door swung open, and Mortimer Sullivan emerged, tall and commanding in a tailored suit, exuding power and just a hint of exhaustion from a long day. Suddenly, a deafening car horn shattered the evening air. Imelda barely had time to register the blinding headlights before a pair of strong arms wrapped around her, yanking her out of harm's way. They tumbled onto the sidewalk, her heart pounding against her ribs, the rush of near disaster leaving her breathless. She gasped, looking up, and met the storm-gray eyes of Mortimer Sullivan. "Is this how you usually greet your most important guests?" His voice was deep, tinged with amusement, but his grip on her arm was firm, as if he wasn't ready to let go just yet. Imelda inhaled sharply, smoothing her dress before replying evenly, "Only for those who don't respect schedules." A flicker of intrigue crossed Mortimer's eyes. The game had begun. No one could deny that Mortimer Sullivan was a dangerous man, not in the violent sense, but in the way he always knew what he wanted and exactly how to get it. After the grand opening, Mortimer persistently sought Imelda's attention. Invitations for coffee, extravagant dinners, or simply text messages reminding her that he was still there, patient, yet impossible to ignore. "I don't have time for these games, Mortimer," Imelda stated one evening as he unexpectedly showed up at her office. "Games?" Mortimer smirked, leaning against her desk with the ease of a man who is used to winning. "I don't play games, Imelda. I make investments. And I happen to think you're my most interesting one yet." She folded her arms, arching a brow. "Then put your money in an interior project, not a dinner reservation." His chuckle was low, indulgent, sending an uninvited shiver down her spine. "What if I want both?" No matter how much she resisted, Imelda couldn't deny the way his presence unsettled her. Perhaps nothing would have changed if not for the crisis that followed. One afternoon, Imelda received a call from her mother. Their family-owned furniture store was on the verge of bankruptcy. The tax debt was overwhelming, and if they didn't pay it soon, they would lose everything. Imelda spent the entire night desperately searching for a solution. But the next morning she received a notification from the bank. "Your outstanding debt has been cleared." She froze. And when she traced the source, it came as no surprise. Mortimer Sullivan's name was on the transaction records. That evening, Imelda stormed into Mortimer's office. No more pleasantries. "Who gave you the right to interfere in my life?" she demanded. Mortimer, unsurprised as if he had predicted this reaction, simply shrugged. "I can return the money, if that's what you want. But ask yourself, Imelda, are you angry because I helped your mother, or because you don't want to admit that you're starting to trust me?" She despised the answer she found within herself. And that night, for the first time, she didn't say no when Mortimer suggested dinner. Love between Imelda and Mortimer burned like a wildfire, intense, consuming, and dangerous. Within just 6 months, they were married in a private ceremony by the shores of Lake Michigan. No extravagant guests, no media frenzy, just two people who believed they could conquer anything together. And for the first year, they were unstoppable. Imelda expanded her interior design firm, landing elite clients. Mortimer grew his real estate empire, taking it global. But love, no matter how fierce, is never enough to sustain a marriage alone. Mortimer's absences stretched longer, canceled dinners, sudden business trips, nights spent away from home. "Do you even remember the last time we had dinner together?" Imelda asked, standing in the vast emptiness of their penthouse. Mortimer loosened his tie, sighing, "You know how important my work is, Imelda. And what about me? Do I matter?" He didn't answer, and that was the most painful response of all. Imelda buried herself in her work, trying to ignore the creeping loneliness. But deep down, a fear took root. The fear that she had fallen in love with a man she never truly understood. Perhaps those doubts would have remained unspoken, if not for Waldo. Waldo Holloway, Mortimer's childhood friend and chief financial officer, had never liked Imelda. "You're losing yourself, Mortimer," Waldo remarked over dinner. "You used to be a ruler, and now a husband, a lovesick fool." Mortimer only chuckled, shaking his head, but Waldo was relentless, and day by day he planted seeds of doubt. Imelda had no idea that the greatest threat to her marriage wasn't distance, but a carefully crafted lie waiting to unfold. Doubt is a dangerous thing. It doesn't destroy all at once. It seeps in like cold rain, slowly eroding even the strongest foundations. And that is exactly what Waldo Holloway did. He didn't rush Mortimer, didn't push him into decisions. Instead, he simply whispered questions, small, subtle, but deadly. "Have you ever wondered why Imelda has been so distant lately? I'm not saying she's hiding something, but maybe you should check the finances." Mortimer didn't want to believe it. He loved Imelda, but once a thought takes root, everything starts looking like proof. He noticed she worked late more often, spent more time at the office, and then one day, Waldo presented him with evidence. Financial reports showing a large sum of money had been transferred from the company into Imelda's personal account. A storm erupted inside Mortimer. That night, he confronted her. "You took money from the company?" His voice was cold, unfamiliar. Imelda looked at him, stunned. "What are you talking about?" He tossed the folder onto the table. "Don't play innocent, Imelda. Why? Why would you do this?" She stared in horror at the manipulated numbers. She knew immediately it was a setup. But what hurt her most wasn't the accusation. It was that Mortimer believed it. She took a deep breath, ready to explain, but suddenly, a wave of dizziness hit her. Her fingers gripped the chair tightly, breath unsteady. "Imelda!" Mortimer stepped forward, but she held up a hand to stop him. And in that moment, she realized she was pregnant. She should have told him. But now, it was too late. "You want the truth, Mortimer?" Imelda whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm pregnant. 2 babies." He froze. But instead of running to her, instead of trusting the love they had, he hesitated. But before she could speak, Mortimer did first. "And what was the money for? Another man?" Imelda froze. "What?" "Tell me I'm wrong." Mortimer's voice was sharp. "Tell me that the baby you're carrying is actually mine." Her world shattered. "You think I cheated on you?" Her voice cracked, disbelieving, as if the mere thought was too absurd to comprehend. Mortimer opened his mouth to answer, but stopped. His silence was worse than any accusation. The air between them thickened, charged with something raw and unforgivable. She let out a broken laugh, shaking her head. "You don't even need to say it," she whispered, eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I already know." "You're doubting me, Mortimer?" she whispered, tears spilling over. "You think I would betray you like that?" He said nothing, and that was enough. That night, Imelda walked away, carrying a secret Mortimer would never know. 15 years had passed. Imelda Bruce was no longer the broken woman she once was. Now she was the CEO of a top interior design firm, running an empire she built from nothing. More importantly, she was the mother of 2 remarkable daughters, Sophia and Lillian. Sophia was brilliant, logical, with the mind of a future architect. Lillian was gentle, creative, with an artist's soul. Both carried their mother's strength and their father's storm gray eyes. A man Imelda had sworn never to let back into their lives. Over the years, Mortimer Sullivan had continued expanding his real estate empire, but no matter how much he achieved, something always felt missing. At the peak of his success, Mortimer discovered Waldo's betrayal. The rage that followed was immeasurable. He had lost everything because of a lie. He had hired investigators to find Imelda, but she had vanished without a trace. No address, no records, no sign of the life she had built. Until one day, Mortimer stumbled upon an architecture magazine featuring promising young talents. Sophia Bruce, 15 years old, recognized for her work in urban sustainability. He froze. His heart clenched as he stared at the photo. Those eyes. His eyes. A chilling realization swept over him. He had children, 2 of them, and he had spent 15 years completely unaware of their existence. Their reunion happened at Sophia's award ceremony. Imelda went rigid the moment she saw Mortimer enter the hall. He moved toward her, his voice low but razor sharp. "You should have told me." Imelda's fingers clenched. "You don't get to say that." Mortimer looked toward the stage where Sophia stood accepting her award. His heart twisted at the sight, a perfect reflection of himself in a young girl's frame. "She doesn't know about me, does she?" he murmured. Imelda turned to face him, her eyes burning. "No, and she never will." But at that moment, Sophia had already noticed them. Her brows furrowed as she glanced at Mortimer, and then she stilled. A chill ran down her spine. Something felt very, very wrong. "Mom, who is that man?" Before Imelda could answer, Mortimer spoke, his voice rough with emotion. "My name is Mortimer Sullivan, and I am your father." The world shattered. Lillian gasped. Sophia stepped back as if she had been struck. No, that's impossible. Our father is dead." Imelda closed her eyes. She had fought for 15 years to protect them, but in an instant, everything had fallen apart. Imelda's apartment was drowning in silence that night. Sophia and Lillian sat across from their mother on the couch, their eyes red from shock and anger. "Through all these years, you lied to us?" Sophia's voice trembled with fury. "I didn't lie," Imelda replied, but even she could hear the falsehood in her own words. "I was protecting you." Lillian let out a small, broken laugh. "Protecting us from what? From our own father?" Imelda had no answer. 3 days later, Mortimer filed a lawsuit demanding the right to see his daughters. "If you won't give me a chance, then the law will." Mortimer's voice was cold when he confronted Imelda. She clenched her fists. "You don't get to just walk into their lives because now it's convenient for you. And you don't get to steal 15 years from me." The battle had begun. The media caught wind of the story, turning it into a public scandal. Imelda was vilified for hiding the truth and robbing a father of his children. Mortimer was criticized for using his power to force his daughters into accepting him. Meanwhile, Sophia and Lillian were hounded by reporters, questioned by friends, and thrown into a war they were never prepared for. "You're hurting them, Mortimer." Imelda's voice was exhausted when she called him late one night. "Do you think I haven't been hurting?" He shot back, his voice rough. "Do you know what it feels like to realize I missed every important moment of their lives?" Imelda had no response. But she knew one thing: this battle was tearing their family apart. And the ones suffering most were the 2 innocent children caught in the middle. The court date was approaching. The tension in the house was unbearable, and even Sophia, the most rational of them all, couldn't hold back anymore. "We are not trophies for you to fight over." She slammed her fork onto the dinner table. Imelda closed her eyes, feeling a dull ache in her chest. A few minutes later, she picked up her phone. "Mortimer, meet me. No lawyers, no press. Just us." They met at an old cafe, far from prying eyes. Mortimer looked at Imelda, and for the first time, there was no anger, only exhaustion. "This is the first time you've reached out to me in 15 years. His voice was quiet. "And maybe it's the first time you're actually listening to me," she replied. "Then talk." Imelda took a deep breath. "You can't fix 15 years with a lawsuit. But if you truly want to be their father, let them decide. Don't force them. Mortimer was silent for a long time. Then he nodded. I'll drop the case. Imelda looked up, surprised. I won't demand custody or force them to accept me. But Imelda, I won't leave again. Whether you want me here or not, I will be. She didn't respond, but for the first time, she didn't stop him either. 3 days later, Sophia received a letter from Mortimer. You don't have to call me Dad, but I'll be here if you're ready. I just want to know your favorite color or what books you like to read, 'cause I missed 15 years and I don't want to miss any more. Sophia folded the letter, her heart unsettled. She looked over at Lillian, who was holding another letter. What do you think? Lillian whispered. Sophia stared out the window, where for the first time the future didn't just include the two of them, but someone else too. Mortimer kept his promise. He didn't force, he didn't demand, he simply stayed. He watched Sophia present at an architecture competition, even though she never invited him. He stood in the back when Lillian displayed her first art exhibition, though she barely acknowledged him. He never asked to be their father, but he waited. One late autumn afternoon, Sophia called him first. I need some research materials on urban design, if you have time. Her voice was distant, but it was the first time she had reached out. Mortimer smiled softly. Whenever you need. Lillian took longer, but one day, caught in the rain, she appeared at his office door, soaked, shivering. Mom doesn't understand me. No one does, she whispered. Mortimer said nothing. He simply took off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. Lillian looked up at him for the first time, feeling a little less like a stranger. Imelda watched it all from a distance. And one evening, as Mortimer dropped their daughters home after a long walk together, she didn't avoid his gaze. For the first time in 15 years, she smiled. Not out of forgiveness, but because, finally, they had found a new way forward. As time passed, the bond between Mortimer and his daughters transformed. Sophia no longer called him only for research. Sometimes she'd just share an exciting project she'd come across. Lillian, instead of keeping her distance, began visiting his office on Saturday afternoons, sketchbook in hand, seeking his opinion. They were no longer just strangers bound by blood. They were becoming a family. And then, one evening, Imelda realized she was no longer avoiding Mortimer. Would you like to have dinner with us? She asked after he dropped the girls home. Mortimer looked surprised, but he didn't ask why. He simply smiled. I'd love to. That dinner was different. There was no bitterness from the past, no unhealed wounds, just two people who had once loved each other, sharing a table as if nothing had ever broken. And when Mortimer absently placed his hand on the table, Imelda didn't pull away. That winter, for the first time in years, they spent Christmas together. The fire crackled softly in the background, the scent of pine and cinnamon filling the air. Sophia and Lillian laughed as they decorated cookies, their joy lighting up the room more than the twinkling fairy lights. Imelda turned, expecting to catch Mortimer watching the girls, but instead, his eyes were on her. Slowly, tentatively, he reached for her hand, his fingers brushing against hers. She could have pulled away, but she didn't. The past was still there, but so was the possibility of a future. Can we start again? Her breath hitched, and then, softly, she nodded. Yes.